Welcome to our deep dive into sports data. Where we try to crack those hidden patterns and maybe get a little edge in predicting those games.
Yeah, it's not your average statistics class, I'll tell you that.
Definitely not. We're going to uncover some strategies that'll make you feel like a sports data detective.
That's right.
And joining me to navigate these stats is our data expert.
Always a pleasure to be here, and I have to say, what continually fascinates me about this whole field is that we're not just dealing with numbers on a spreadsheet. We're searching for order in the chaos of sports, which, believe me, is no easy task.
Right, and we need all the help we can get, right? So let's kick things off with a strategy that sounds like something out of a high-stakes poker game. The Kelly criterion.
Ooh, the Kelly criterion. That's a fun one. It's a formula that tries to tell you not only if you should place a bet, but how much of your bankroll you should theoretically put down, which can get a little wild.
Yeah, and risky, right? I mean, one article used the example of like an average win rate of 69.05%, and the Kelly criterion recommended betting like a crazy 28.13% of your bankroll. That's a huge chunk just based on one thing.
It is a lot to bet on a single factor, and that's the catch with the Kelly criterion. It assumes perfect information and a long, long timeline to recover from those inevitable losses, which, let's face it, are part of the game.
Exactly.
In the real world of sports, with all the upsets and variables, betting that aggressively, well, you could be out of the game pretty quickly.
Yeah, it would have to be a really long timeline to recover from some of those losses, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe not for your average Tuesday night game, huh?
Probably not.
Okay, so let's maybe bring it down to earth a bit with a strategy that seems a little more my style. Fixed percentage bankroll management.
There you go.
So this one sounds a bit more, my speed.
Yeah.
I'm all about managing those risks, not taking wild swings. So how does this approach actually work?
So instead of going all in on every hunch, think of it as playing the long game. With fixed percentage bankroll management, you pick a small percentage, maybe 1% or 2% of your bankroll, and that becomes your maximum bet, regardless of how confident you are.
So even if I think it's a sure thing, I'm sticking to that 1-2% limit.
Exactly. Discipline, consistency, that's the key. And what's interesting is that this approach actually has roots in traditional financial management. It's the same logic you'd use for stocks or even running a business managing risk over time for that slow and steady growth.
Right, so it's like we're taking the emotion out of it, which can be pretty tough when you're caught up in a game.
Absolutely.
So we've gone from high-stakes poker to responsible investing. I like it. What else do we have?
Well, let's dive into something that might seem a little out there at first. Time-based analysis.
Time-based? Are we talking like are certain days of the week luckier for some teams or something?
Not quite, although I'm sure there are some fans out there with their lucky jerseys and rituals. No, time-based analysis digs into the actual time of day a match is played. And this is where it gets interesting. Looking at the data we have, matches that occur between 00.00 and 12.0 UTC have a 100% accuracy rate.
Wait, 100% accuracy. So if I just adjust my sleep schedule and catch those early morning games?
No, hold on. Don't go changing your entire routine just yet. We have to remember correlation doesn't equal causation here. Just because we see this pattern in our data set doesn't mean those time slots are guaranteed wins.
Of course. Yeah.
It's more about understanding that sometimes the most interesting insights come from the most unexpected places.
So why even look at the time of day if it's not a guaranteed win? What's the point of even factoring that in?
Because it forces us to ask why. Why this particular pattern? Could it be player fatigue, travel schedules messing with their game?
Makes sense.
Maybe even something as simple as a home team advantage being stronger in those early morning matches. It's about digging deeper.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
We have this clue, a 100% accuracy rate, and now we've got to figure out what it all means.
Exactly. And that's where the real fun of data analysis begins. But let's move on to another strategy I think you'll find interesting, especially if you've ever felt that hot streak energy. Let's talk about sequential analysis.
Okay, hot streak energy. Now you're speaking my language. I'm all about riding that wave. So tell me, what's the secret sauce with this sequential analysis?
Well, it really taps into this very human thing we do, the idea that success builds on itself. We see it all the time, right? A basketball player makes a couple shots, suddenly they're unstoppable.
Right, like they got the hot hand.
Yeah.
But is that a real thing statistically? Or are our brains just wired to see patterns?
That's a great question. And the hot hand debate still goes on among analysts. But that human instinct, that belief in momentum, is what sequential analysis tries to capitalize on.
Okay, so how's it work? Do I up my bets every time my team wins?
Essentially, yes, but with a method to the madness. So you start with your base bet, and after a win, you might bump it up a bit, say 10%. After a loss, you pull back by a similar amount, like riding a wave, but with a life vest.
Smart, because those waves can crash pretty hard.
Exactly. And that's the danger of this strategy, or really any strategy based solely on past performance. It's the gambler's fallacy.
Gambler's fallacy. Remind me, what is that again?
So it's the mistake of thinking past events can influence future ones in random events. A coin lands heads 5 times in a row doesn't mean it's more likely to land tails the next flip.
Right.
Each one is independent, just like sports matches.
So even if the team's on a roll, no guarantee they'll win the next one, no matter how hot they seem.
Exactly. And that's why even with a strategy like sequential analysis, which tries to account for those wins and losses, you've got to have those limits. Think of it as setting up those guardrails.
So like an exit strategy, even when you're on a winning streak, which can be tough to do when you're caught up in the moment.
For sure.
So we've covered some ground here. We've gone from the Kelly criterion, which is like the high risk, high reward option, to this more grounded fixed percentage approach, and now this sequential analysis, which is kind of intriguing, but, potentially risky.
Yeah, it's like having all these tools, but knowing which one to use and when, right? But I think you've really hit on something. None of these strategies can actually tell us the future.
Exactly. No crystal ball and data analysis, unfortunately. But, it's more about how these strategies make us think about risk and probability. How much can we really rely on past results when it comes to sports?
Right, because there are so many factors in sports. Some we can measure and some we just can't.
Exactly. You have to appreciate that, even with all the data in the world, there's still that element of unpredictability. That's what makes sports so captivating.
Yeah.
Keeps us guessing. So, before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. If you had to design your own sports analysis system, what's the one factor, the one thing you'd absolutely have to include?
Ooh, that's a great question to ponder.
It is. Well, that's it for our deep dive this time. Thanks for joining us. Keep those analytical minds sharp, and we'll see you next time.